and welcome to this Finance Malta podcast. The topic today is the family office. I'm Vanessa MacDonald, and I have here with me in the studio Bryony Jennings, who's the director of the Boston Group, Marc, who's the director of the tax function within Deloitte, and Stefan Magnusson, who is the CEO of the Living Capital Group. Thank you very much for being with us. And what an interesting topic. I like the idea of these families that have so much wealth that they actually need to have someone manage it for them. Perhaps one of the first things I'd like to understand really about a family office is what makes it different from the normal wealth management services or private banking services that are on offer. Marc, perhaps you'd like to tell me.
Yes, of course. Well, the concept of a family office is really one where families have a certain amount of wealth which they prefer for a variety of reasons to manage in-house. Some of the fundamental reasons for that is that there is customization in terms of not pooling their assets with external investors. There is no conflict of interest because it is all undertaken in-house. There is a certain element of confidentiality and discretion which you find traditional families who operate such offices choose and wish to have. In addition to that, you can also put certain additional features in there which assimilate to a family office concept, which is things such as charitable causes, collectibles, art collections, and other real estate management. And it is all managed in-house for the family, tailor-made, bespoke, if you like, for that particular family's needs and requirements.
Well, we'll talk later on about what Malta is offering, but what I'd like to understand is, with regards to Deloitte here in Malta, I understand that family office, the whole concept has been around since the 1980s, but has Deloitte been into it, so to speak? Has it recognised it and given it importance for that long, or is it something more recent?
No, we've been involved in the family office business for quite some time, over a decade now. I think it's fair to say that the foundations in Malta for the family office business was laid in the early 90s when Malta's legislation to turn it into a financial centre, onshore financial centre, was enacted. But the concept really kicked off at the turn of the century when Malta's accession to the EU was gaining momentum, and there was a significant level of interest in Malta in the family office concept. At that point, Deloitte recognised the potential and the requirements of the family office and decided to start investing in that particular line of business, offering support services across a wide range of requirements to help and support those family offices once they do decide to come to Malta and set up their business over here.
Bryony, the Boston Group was actually set up in 2002 specifically to look after the assets of one particular family.
That's correct.
You opened up an office here in Malta not very long ago, just in April, in fact, of 2012. What happens? I mean, the whole concept is to look after the wealth of one family. So yeah. Are you now looking after other families? Or?
Yeah, we look after many families around the world. Originally, Boston was set up to look after the founding family, which still owns Boston. They relocated to the Isle of Man, and that single family office still exists, and it's a separate legal entity. Now we have a more commercial arm which services wealthy families around the world from the Isle of Man, our headquarters. And this year we opened up here in Malta to have an onshore EU presence, just to be able to provide a much more wide variety of structuring to our clienteles and future clients.
When you're talking about a family, you're talking about people with a considerable amount of wealth, which goes into the 6 and 7 digits. Are these families still private companies? Do you actually get publicly listed companies as well?
Absolutely. I mean, confidentiality is very key. I mean, there's 3 really important areas here for a family office. There's confidentiality, consolidation of assets, and control. There's a degree of transparency in today's world. You know, we need to make sure that everything is as it should be, but there's still a huge amount of confidentiality that can be maintained, which is very, very important to these families. But not just that, there's also the human side to family office. So you have a social element with charities, but it's also about the human side in terms of the families themselves, transferring wealth to the next generation, you know, encouraging education within the next generation of how they can be the next responsible owners of wealth.
Which is a particular concern for families because succession planning and all
Absolutely.
of this is quite difficult, especially when you go on to the second and third generations, I'm sure. Yeah. Stefan, Living Capital opened in Malta in 2009, but I notice you've got an MFSA license. The Malta Financial Services Authority in Malta is the regulator for banking, insurance and this sort of thing. Do you need an MFSA license? What is the role of the MFSA?
Yeah, we don't actually have an MFSA license, we have an FSA license, a British Financial Services Authority license. And that license we used because as a family office we looked after primarily one family, but we also took external clients, and to give them advice on their investments we needed that authorization from the UK. Now when we moved to Malta, the operations we do here don't require the license of the MFSA, although the FSA and the MFSA have a passporting relationship, so we could conceivably do the same operations here based on the British license. Now, the MFSA, the function of that, Marc is much more qualified to talk about it broadly, but the MFSA is set up to look after the compliance function and the regulatory framework of Malta as a financial jurisdiction. So it's the overarching financial watchdog.
And what's your setup? Is it the same as Boston? Did you start off with one single family and then moved on to take on the assets of others? Or?
Well, we actually started off with one arm of a single family, the scion of a wealthy entrepreneurial family. And then, because of the way he wanted us to do things, which were quite inventive and dynamic, we brought in other parts of the same family wealth, and after that we took in external clients. Now in Malta, in fact, we've set up a corporate services company so we can offer that service to basically to anyone who's looking for that type of structure.